What happens when individuals sentenced to capital punishment become the object of admiration and love? These are the unexpected stories of those who, despite their crimes, became the objects of obsession, devotion, and even marriage proposals. Wade Stephen Wilson was born in 1994 in Florida. Wade Wilson is known for his unique facial tattoos resembling the comic book character. He was found guilty for the tragic loss of 2 women in Cape Coral, Florida in 2019. In August 2024, Wilson was sentenced to capital punishment for each act. Despite the severity of his actions, Justin Wilson attracted an unusual level of attention while behind bars, particularly from women. According to reports, his jail inbox was flooded with roughly 3,900 messages from admirers and self-proclaimed fans. Some of these messages included explicit photographs and emotional appeals, with several writers arguing that Wilson should receive a life sentence rather than capital punishment, often citing his history of drug use and mental health struggles. This kind of attention isn't uncommon in high-profile criminal cases. Experts suggest that such relationships are often based on fantasy, shaped by media portrayals, curated social media narratives, and the emotional distance that comes with limited prison contact. It allows admirers to construct an idealized version of the inmate, detached from the reality of their actions. Wilson's appearance also added to the attention. He had tattoos all over his face, including ones that made him look like the comic book character Deadpool. These tattoos became a talking point during his trial. His photo spread online, and people took notice, not just because of what he did, but because of how he looked. One notable incident involved Bunny So, the wife of country rap artist Jelly Roll. According to public statements, Wilson shared Bunny's phone number without her consent, leading to unwanted contact from people linked to him. Bunny later addressed the situation publicly, making it clear that she had no personal connection to Wilson and was uncomfortable with being drawn into the situation. Although Wilson has received multiple marriage proposals during his time on death row, there is no indication that he's pursued any formal relationships. So far, his contact with admirers seems limited to letters. Still, the volume and intensity of the messages he receives reflect a broader phenomenon: how infamy, appearance, and a narrative of misunderstood identity can blur the line between criminal and celebrity in the eyes of some. As of March 2025, Wilson is waiting for his capital punishment to be carried out. His appearance is deteriorating. Recent images depict him as bloated and missing teeth. But what about an admired figure whose very name became synonymous with terror on the West Coast? Richard Ramirez was born in 1960 in El Paso, Texas. He was the youngest of 5 children in a Mexican-American family. His father, a former police officer from Juarez, had trouble controlling his anger, which made the household a difficult place to grow up in. Between 1984 and 1985, Ramirez's nickname was the Night Stalker. He was held responsible for harming 13 people fatally. He also left symbols related to dark beliefs at some of the locations, which added to the fear he created. But during his time behind bars, Ramirez gained a following, particularly among women. Many sent him letters expressing fascination, admiration, and even romantic interest. Among those who wrote to Ramirez, some were captivated by his infamy, while others believed they could see a different side of him, a man who needed understanding, love, or even saving. This belief, often called the savior complex, is a powerful psychological force. It convinces people they can change someone others fear, that they alone can reach the humanity buried deep within. During his trial, he even had a small group of devoted followers who attended court hearings, sent him love letters, and visited him. Some even proposed marriage. One of Ramirez's most well-known admirers was Doreen Leoy, a freelance magazine editor. She became interested in him after seeing his arrest photo and started writing to him in 1985. Over the next 11 years, she sent nearly 75 letters and developed a strong emotional connection with him. Despite the overwhelming evidence against him, Leoy publicly defended him, insisting he was innocent. In 1996, she and Ramirez got married in a simple ceremony inside the visiting room of California's San Quentin State Prison. Their relationship received a lot of media attention, with many questioning why she was so devoted to him. She described him as kind, funny, and charming, standing by him even as the world saw him as a dangerous person. The next case centers on a man whose charm had a strange effect, even from behind bars. Ted Bundy was born in 1946 in Burlington, Vermont. He was responsible for fatally harming at least 30 women across multiple states between 1974 and 1978, though the actual number is suspected to be higher. He often pretended to be injured or posed as an authority figure to gain their trust before luring them in. Bundy was known for his charm and intelligence, which he used to lure people into dangerous situations.
I've been impolite, and there are things I regret having done in my life, but nothing like the things I think that you're referring to.
Despite the horrors tied to his name, Ted Bundy became an object of fascination while behind bars. Women from across the country sent him letters filled with admiration. Some even included intimate messages and marriage proposals. It was a chilling contrast, a man responsible for unspeakable acts now receiving love and devotion from strangers. This disturbing phenomenon, where people develop romantic feelings for those who do such things, is known as hybristophilia, a psychological attraction to the very darkness most would run from. One of the most well-known relationships Bundy had during his time in prison was with Carol Ann Boone, a former co-worker from Washington. Boone strongly believed in his innocence and stood by him throughout his trials. In a highly publicized moment during the penalty phase of his 1980 trial, Bundy proposed to Boone while she was testifying in court, and she accepted. Under Florida law at the time, this was considered a legally binding marriage. Boone later had a daughter believed to be Bundy's child, reportedly conceived during a private visit, though such visits were generally not allowed. Many have wondered why Ted Bundy, despite the brutality of his actions, attracted such a devoted following of admirers. Before we get into it, make sure to like and subscribe for more chilling true crime content. So, why the fascination? For some, there's a strange allure in the danger. The thrill of being connected to someone so infamous, someone whose story is wrapped in mystery and fear. Bundy wasn't just any criminal. He became a household name, his face plastered across newspapers and TV screens. That level of media attention turned him into a dark celebrity, and some were drawn to the spotlight he carried with him. And then, of course, there was Bundy's charm. He was known for being articulate, well-spoken, and persuasive. Traits he used not only to manipulate his victims, but also to win over those who would later write to him, defend him, and even propose marriage. And next, it's an individual whose actions push the boundaries of human cruelty. Jeffrey Dahmer was born in 1960 in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. Despite having what seemed like a normal childhood, Dahmer showed early signs of distress, such as an unusual interest in animals that had passed away. His parents' troubled relationship and eventual divorce may have contributed to his growing isolation and emotional struggles. Dahmer's pattern involved inviting individuals to his home under the pretense of offering money or companionship. Once there, he would incapacitate them using substances, take advantage of them, and then end their lives. Afterward, he would often keep parts of their bodies as souvenirs. His actions were fueled by a need for control and an inability to cope with feelings of loneliness and abandonment. He was responsible for taking the lives of 17 young men and boys between 1978 and 1991. Despite the horrific nature of his actions, Dahmer received an unexpected amount of attention while behind bars. Behind bars, Jeffrey Dahmer continued to fascinate and disturb the public. In 2 years, he received hundreds of letters from across the United States. Some included monetary gifts, others came with photographs, and a few even contained marriage proposals. The senders ranged from curious onlookers to obsessed admirers. Many wrote out of a desire to understand him, trying to make sense of what could drive a person to such horrific extremes. Some asked probing questions about his childhood, his mental state, or his thoughts on morality. Others expressed sympathy, framing Dahmer as a misunderstood figure shaped by trauma or mental illness. But what surprised many was the romantic and emotional tone in some of the correspondence. A number of women claimed to feel a deep connection with him, despite never meeting him. For these individuals, the act of writing wasn't necessarily about Dahmer himself. It was about attaching themselves to someone notorious, as if that connection granted them a sense of meaning, attention, or power by association. Despite the influx of mail, Dahmer remained selective. He responded to only a small fraction of the letters, mostly those he found thoughtful or respectful. Dahmer remained in prison until November 28, 1994, when he was unalived by a fellow inmate. His story remains one of the most chilling, but what comes next is disturbing in an entirely different way. Chris Watts was born in 1985 in North Carolina. He married Shanann Catherine Zuchek, and they had 2 daughters, Bella and Celeste. At the time of the tragedy, Shanann was pregnant with their 3rd child. The family lived in Frederick, Colorado, and from the outside, they seemed happy. However, their marriage was falling apart, largely due to Chris's secret relationship with a co-worker, Nicole Kessinger. On August 13, 2018, shortly after Shanann returned home from a business trip, Chris took her life in their home. He then did the same to Bella and Celeste. On November 6, 2018, he pleaded guilty. Despite the seriousness of his actions, Chris Watts began receiving a steady stream of letters almost immediately after his incarceration. Some expressed sympathy, offering prayers for forgiveness. Others were romantic, sometimes intensely so, filled with flirtatious language, revealing photos, and marriage proposals. A surprising number of people, mostly women, claimed to see something redeemable in him. Some believed they could connect with him on a deeper level. Others thought he had been pushed too far or misunderstood entirely. So, who were these people writing to him? Most were women, often drawn in by his appearance and the media storm that followed the case. To them, Watts didn't fit the usual image of an unaliver. He was quiet, clean-cut, and in many ways ordinary. Some called him handsome, others sensitive, and many admitted they first reached out simply because they couldn't reconcile the man they saw on TV with the horrific acts he committed. Reports suggest that Watts received dozens, possibly hundreds of letters. While the exact number isn't known, it's confirmed that he replied to several and accepted financial contributions to his prison account. The full extent of his communication with admirers remains unclear, but one thing is certain: his notoriety earned him an unsettling kind of fan base. Lyle and Eric Menendez became widely known in the early 1990s, after being found responsible for the tragic loss of their parents, Jose and Kitty Menendez, in 1989. The case drew national attention not only because of the nature of what happened, but also due to the unexpected public support the brothers received, particularly from women. Lyle, born in 1968, and Eric, born on November 27, 1970, grew up in a wealthy family in Beverly Hills, California. On August 20, 1989, Lyle and Eric unalived their parents inside their family's Beverly Hills mansion. Afterward, they attempted to create the impression that their parents had been targeted by an outside group. Their legal proceedings quickly became one of the most talked-about cases of the time. The brothers argued that they had acted out of fear, claiming that the long-term mistreatment by their father had reached a breaking point. The prosecution, however, presented a different perspective, suggesting that financial gain was the real motivation, pointing to the lavish spending that took place after the incident. Despite their convictions, the Menendez brothers continued to draw intense public attention, especially from women who felt deeply connected to their story. For some, it wasn't just about what happened, but about the emotional weight behind it, the abuse claims, the family dynamics, the courtroom drama. It struck a nerve, and for a certain subset of people, that emotional intensity translated into something else: romantic attachment. The reasons for hybristophilia vary, a desire to comfort, the thrill of danger, or the strange allure of being close to someone infamous. Some believe they see the real person beneath the headlines. Others are drawn to the attention that comes with associating themselves with a name the world recognizes. In prison, reactions to this kind of attention vary. For some inmates, it's a way to stay connected to the outside world. For others, it becomes a source of emotional support, or even leverage. Lyle Menendez became something of a prison celebrity. He received a flood of letters, many romantic, some offering marriage. One came from Anna Erickson, a former model who saw his trial on TV. Their exchange turned into a relationship, and they married in 1996. But it unraveled in 2001 after Anna learned Lyle had been writing to other women. 2 years later, Lyle remarried, this time to Rebecca Sneed, a journalist he'd known for years before they wed behind bars. Eric Menendez also found love while incarcerated. After his conviction, he began corresponding with Tammy Saccoman. Through regular letters and visits, their bond deepened, and in 1999, they married in the prison waiting room. Years later, Tammy wrote a memoir titled "They Said We'd Never Make It," detailing their relationship and how they've sustained it within the limits of prison life. Next, we explore a case where admiration can turn into something extremely dangerous. Dylan Storm Roof was born in 1994 in Columbia, South Carolina. He grew up in a difficult environment, dealing with family instability. On June 17, 2015, Roof entered Emmanuel African Methodist Episcopal Church in Charleston, South Carolina, during a Bible study session. He sat with the congregation for about an hour before suddenly pulling out a weapon and targeting 9 African American church members, including the senior pastor. Roof later admitted that he had planned this because he wanted to stir up racial tensions. Dylan Roof attracted attention from a number of admirers while in prison, many of them women. One of them was Elizabeth LeCron, a 24-year-old from Toledo, Ohio. Drawn to extremist ideologies and obsessed with mass notoriety, LeCron began corresponding with Roof. In her letters, she expressed admiration for his actions and aligned herself with his views. But her interest didn't stop at words. Online, LeCron curated a disturbing presence, sharing content related to mass tragedies and openly discussing her own intentions to carry out something similar. Over time, she and her boyfriend, Vincent Armstrong, began putting together a detailed plan. They gathered materials, scoped out potential locations, and prepared for what they hoped would gain them infamy. Their plan unraveled when someone reported them to authorities. In December 2018, LeCron was arrested. She later pleaded guilty and, in November 2019, was sentenced to 15 years in prison, followed by a lifetime of supervised release. But the next case? Oh, it's unsettling beyond comprehension. Richard Speck was born in 1941 in Kirkwood, Illinois, as the 7th of 8 children. His early years were difficult, especially after his father, a hardworking laborer, passed away when Richard was 6. On July 13, 1966, Speck carried out a horrific act in Chicago, Illinois. He broke into a townhouse where 9 student nurses lived. Over the course of several hours, he restrained and tormented them one by one. 8 of the young women lost their lives that night. One nurse managed to survive by hiding under a bed and later became the key witness in his trial. While serving his sentence at Stateville Correctional Center in Illinois, Richard Speck gained a bizarre kind of infamy behind bars. One of the more unusual details about his prison life was his attachment to birds, especially sparrows that flew into his cell. This odd habit earned him the nickname Birdman, a strange contrast to the horrific actions that put him there. Despite his brutal past, Speck received fan mail, including love letters and marriage proposals. The fact that anyone would admire him baffled many. While specific details of his replies remain unclear, records confirm he received frequent correspondence, revealing an unsettling level of public fascination. Then, in 1988, everything escalated. A contraband video recorded inside the prison surfaced, and what it showed stunned the public. In the footage, Speck appeared relaxed and even boastful. engaging in illegal substance use and intimate activity, wearing women's underwear, and showing off his altered body. His appearance had changed dramatically. He had developed visible breast tissue, believed to be the result of hormone treatments. Why the transformation? According to reports, Speck may have taken hormones to adapt to prison culture, either to gain protection, take on a submissive role, or receive certain favors. At one point, he even admitted he felt no guilt for what he had done, leaving many unsettled by his lack of remorse. John Wayne Gacy was born in 1942 in Chicago, Illinois. He became known for his involvement in the community, often entertaining children at parties and charity events while dressed as a clown, which earned him the nickname the Killer Clown. However, behind this friendly image, he was responsible for harming at least 33 young men and boys in the 1970s. He became a figure of fascination, especially for people who believed they saw something more beneath the headlines. Dozens wrote to him, many of them women. Some were driven by curiosity, others by misguided sympathy, and a few by the belief that they could somehow redeem or understand him. The letters varied widely. Some offered forgiveness or claimed he deserved a second chance. Others were far more emotional, people expressing deep personal connections with a man they had never met. Some were fascinated by the contrast between his public persona as a community man and the monster he'd been revealed to be. Others just wanted answers. How did someone like him exist? Gacy didn't ignore the attention. In fact, he often wrote back. His responses touched on a wide range of topics: his personal views, memories from his life, complaints about prison, and especially his artwork. He became known for creating disturbing, clown-themed paintings that were later sold or displayed, further fueling the dark mythology that built around him. He wasn't just remembered, Dzhokhar Anzorovich Tsarnaev was born in 1993 in Russia. His family later immigrated to the United States, settling in Cambridge, Massachusetts. His family struggled financially, and his older brother, Tamerlan Tsarnaev, had difficulty finding steady work, which led to growing tensions at home. On April 15, 2013, Dzhokhar and Tamerlan Tsarnaev placed 2 pressure cooker explosives near the finish line of the Boston Marathon. When they went off, 3 people lost their lives, and over 260 others were injured. Surveillance footage helped authorities identify the brothers, leading to a large-scale manhunt. As they tried to escape, they were involved in an altercation where an MIT police officer lost his life. Shortly after, Tamerlan was severely injured in a confrontation with law enforcement and did not survive. Dzhokhar managed to flee, but was later found hiding in a boat in a suburban backyard and taken into custody. Even while in custody, Tsarnaev continued to receive attention from the public. Reports suggest that he was sent nearly 1,000 pieces of unsolicited mail, including letters and cards from individuals who either supported him, believed he was innocent, or encouraged him to convert to Christianity. Some of the letters even contained marriage proposals. Despite this influx of mail, Tsarnaev's communication with the outside world was heavily restricted under Special Administrative Measures, SAMs. These measures limited his mail correspondence to 1 letter per week, addressed only to immediate family members, with each letter not exceeding 3 double-sided pages. All incoming and outgoing mail was subject to FBI review, a process that could delay delivery by up to 60 days to ensure no coded messages were transmitted. Did Tsarnaev respond to these messages? According to his defense attorneys, he did not reply to any of the unsolicited mail he received. Now, stay tuned for the story of a person who gained fame while behind bars and received numerous marriage proposals. Stephen Avery, born July 9, 1962, in Wisconsin, was wrongfully convicted in 1985 and served 18 years before DNA evidence exonerated him in 2003. In 2005, he was accused of unaliving photographer Teresa Halbach. Avery claimed he was framed but was convicted in 2007 and sentenced to life without parole. Stephen Avery's story exploded into public consciousness after the release of Netflix's Making a Murderer. The documentary chronicled his 1985 wrongful conviction, his release in 2003, And the stunning twist, his arrest and conviction just 2 years later for a different incident. The series sparked outrage, debate, and endless online theories. It also turned Avery into a household name. In the wake of the 2015 release, Avery's prison mailbox overflowed. Thousands of letters poured in, some offering support, others expressing admiration, and more than a few taking a romantic turn. Among the flood of messages was one from Lynn Hartman, a legal secretary from Las Vegas. What started as a letter turned into regular phone calls, daily conversations over 8 months that built an intense connection. Though they had met in person only once, Avery proposed. Hartman said yes. Their engagement made headlines in September 2016, drawing even more media attention to a case already surrounded by controversy and emotion. For many, it was another strange chapter in a story that kept shifting, from injustice to obsession, and from courtroom drama to unexpected romance. However, their relationship fell apart quickly. By October 2016, Avery ended the engagement, accusing Hartman of being more interested in publicity than in him. Hartman, in turn, faced intense public criticism, including online harassment and threats, making the situation even more complicated. Henry Hank Skinner, born April 4, 1962, was convicted in 1995 for the 1993 passing of Twyla Busby and her 2 sons in Pampa, Texas. Skinner, her live-in boyfriend, claimed he was incapacitated by illegal substances and had no memory of the event. He maintained his innocence and fought for DNA testing, but his conviction was upheld. During his time in prison, Hank Skinner became the focus of international attention, not just for his case, but for the growing belief that he might be innocent. Among those who rallied behind him was Sandrine Georges, a French activist deeply involved in the fight against capital punishment. Their connection began in the late 1990s through the Lamp of Hope project, a program that connected capital punishment inmates with people on the outside through letters and conversation. What started as advocacy soon became personal. Over 4 years of steady correspondence, their bond deepened. By 2000, Sandrine was flying from France to Texas to visit Skinner in prison. Their relationship continued to grow, despite the harsh limitations of prison life. In October 2008, they were married, an emotional milestone that drew attention to the human stories behind legal battles. Skinner's case is one of many that highlight how strong, even intimate relationships can form through prison walls. For some, it's rooted in empathy. For others, it's a belief in justice, or the fight to correct it. In Sandrine's case, it was all of the above, a cause that became a commitment, and a legal fight that became love. Skinner spent nearly 28 years in prison, much of it in solitary confinement. Over the years, multiple dates were set for carrying out his sentence, but legal appeals repeatedly delayed the process. On February 16, 2023, Skinner passed away due to complications from a brain tumor.